Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Today we're answering the question, what does God say about the environment? This is really a hot topic right now in our world. In politics, we hear about climate change, we hear about global warming, we hear about the Paris Climate Agreement and the US pulling out of it. We hear all these things about the environment, a lot of questions, and so we want to see, what does God say about the environment? Well, the best place really to start when you're looking at what God says about the environment is at the very beginning of the Bible, where we see that God created our entire world, our entire environment, our universe in 6 days. And when God was done creating it, we know that everything was perfect. No hurricanes, no polar ice caps melting, no droughts. Everything was perfect. And God had a plan for humans in this world. He told Adam and Eve that this was going to be their job. He said, "Fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." So in God's plan, in this perfect world, humans would be ruling over the world, taking care of it, and protecting it. And not just ruling over the world and taking care of it, but also enjoying it. God told Adam and Eve that everything that he had made was for their enjoyment. It was all to benefit them. So in God's plan, he had created this perfect world, and now he had humans who would rule over and protect and take care of and enjoy this perfect environment. And of course, we know this is not how it played out. Adam and Eve fell into sin. And now we suffer the consequences of that sin because we are sinful. And it's not just humans that suffer the consequences of sin. It's the world. It's our environment as well. The Apostle Paul wrote in Romans chapter 8, "We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time." And so not only do humans suffer because of sin, Paul says the whole environment, our world, also suffers because of sin. It's groaning, and we see this, right? We see it with fires and hurricanes and all of the natural disasters, hail damage, all of these things. Our world has been corrupted. It suffers because of sin. And so as we think about how our world has been decimated by sin and how the effects of sin have ruined our environment in many ways, we also want to keep in mind something that God told, a promise that he made many years ago. After God sent a flood that destroyed the entire world, he made a promise. He put a rainbow in the sky, and he promised he would never again send a flood that would destroy the entire earth. But he made another promise as well. He told Noah, and it's a promise for all of us, he says, "As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease." So God promises, even when the environment seems to be corrupted because of sin, we see natural disasters, God says, "I'm never going to let it get to the point where the earth becomes uninhabitable." Right? We'll always still have seasons. We'll always have rain. We'll have harvest times. God will always keep his creation from becoming totally destroyed by sin. And so this is something for us to keep in mind. And so what do we want to do? How do we treat the environment? As with all of the topics that we're looking at, we want to find the middle ground. So on one hand, we want to take care of God's creation, right? We recognize this is one of the responsibilities that God has given to us as humans. It's kind of like, if you have some friends with a beautiful house where everything's really expensive and, there's stained glass and chandeliers and beautiful wood everywhere, and they ask you, "We're going to go on vacation, can you watch our house for a little while?" You want to take good care of it, right? It's beautiful. You want to preserve it, right? And this is what we want to do with God's beautiful creation. We want to take care of it. And yet, at the same time that we do that, we don't want to get so caught up in this that we begin to worry about what's going to happen, about things in our environment getting so bad that we can no longer live on this earth. We want to remember the promise that God made, that he will always give us seasons, and he will give us harvest, and he will give us rain. And so we trust God to take care of the environment. And then we look forward as well. Did you notice in that promise that God made to Abraham, he said, "I'm going to always take care of the environment until when?" He says, I'm going to do this as long as the earth endures. Right? God says the world is not going to be around forever. And this is something that the Apostle Paul wrote about in Romans 8. Paul wrote, "The creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God." Let me walk you through those verses real quick. So Paul says something we've already talked about, that creation has been subjected to frustration. Creation is subject to sin. And because of that, creation is looking forward to the time when it will be liberated from this bondage to decay, when sin will no longer be corrupting this world. And when is that going to happen? God says through the Apostle Paul, this is going to happen when the children of God are revealed. All right, so when will that be? Right now, it's not always clear who is a child of God and who is not, who's a Christian and who is not. But when will that distinction be made perfectly clear? That'll happen on the last day. God will separate believers from unbelievers, and his children will be revealed. And so on the last day, Paul says, and God says, that something is going to happen to creation, that it'll no longer be subject to the frustration of sin. In the book of 2 Peter, God reveals to us a little bit more what that will be like. Peter is writing about the last day, and he says, "That day will bring about the destruction of the heavens by fire, and the elements will melt in the heat. But in keeping with God's promise, we are looking forward to a new heaven and a new earth where righteousness dwells." Right, so on the last day, God will destroy this earth and he will make it new. Right? He will make it perfect, and we will live in that perfect environment forever. So, to summarize, what does God say about the environment? Here's what I said. God wants us to take care of the world he created and to trust that he will preserve it until he makes it new on the last day. And then here's our question for further thought. We talked about how there are kind of two ditches we can fall into. On the one hand, we can get so worried about the environment that we don't trust God, and we think that's something we need to be the ones to take care of it and to make sure that nothing bad is going to happen. So we don't trust God. On the other side, some people fall into this idea that, since God's going to take care of the world, I don't have to really worry about it at all. Right? Both of these are ditches that we want to avoid. So think about for yourself, which one are you more likely to fall into? Are you more likely to worry and to not trust God, or are you more likely to not really do a good job taking care of his creation? Think about then why that is, and then think about maybe what you can do to change that. If you have any ideas for future topics, shoot me an email. Thanks for watching. God's blessings on the rest of your day.